Things are going to start happening to me now.
You've done all the reading. You're a scholar. You're a professor. You've done all the reading. You've done the intellectual heavy lifting.
More or less, eat shit and die.
You wouldn't know a fact if it begged you all night long.
Want to give the wrong impression because I am very high.
Ran up behind him with a hatchet. Smash, smash, smash. Yeah.
Care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you.
It's a double. Back for more. Same day, same show, same people, but maybe a little bit different topic. Andy, you did the right thing. You got your daughter, right?
Yeah, I'm about to have to send her downstairs. She don't want to be quiet over there.
Oh, boy. Well, this is Libertarian Podcast Review. We've got Garbage Man Andy. We've got Tyler in the house. I think episode 82. We're just cruising along. We're just adding them in as much as we can today. Going through a second segment of the Respondent. There you go. Andy's shown it on there by Greg Ellis. So we did another one. You had to go get your daughter because you're not a deadbeat dad and you've got custody. So there you go. And...
just by happenstance.
No, you've always. I mean, this is why this is a big deal to you as well. There you go.
Yeah.
So, do you want to? I don't know if you have to calm that down, but we're fine.
Yeah, take it away for a couple minutes. Give me a second.
Let me just describe to people what's going on here. We'll just do this till Andy comes back. We talked, first segment was Greg Ellis, the Respondent. He writes a book. It's about losing his kids in the California court system. And as a family law attorney in California, it was something I wanted to take a look at. Biggest thing and we'll bring Andy back here. Oops, add to the stream when he's ready to come. The biggest thing take away that I came from this is, well, do you believe him or not? I want to make sure that, especially men, there is this thing out there, they get screwed over, and to make sure that men, if they are in this situation, that they understand that they don't just give the courts the excuse. They don't play the victim, that there's stuff they can do. And that's kind of my goal. So we're going to walk through this again. We went through the first 3 chapters, Greg Ellis getting screwed over. And I want to make sure that we kind of, because look, there is probably some things about this situation that really got, nasty and got ugly. I would like to help people, and I'll just say we're going to walk through some mistakes he's made. Maybe when we're done with this section, we'll recap it with mistakes he's made and some solutions he's done. So far, Andy, you on the edge of your seat?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a good story. It seems almost too insane to be true, and I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I know in this section, you said you've got some of the legal documents, so it'll be interesting to see kind of, where it strays from this book into what actually happened in court. Yeah, I mean, so far it's been good, and I want to take it at face value, just knowing how crazy all this stuff can be. It shouldn't be a secret or a surprise to any of us that CPS has done some pretty evil things, as well as family courts and the police. So.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I'm in between segment, the first one and this one. I went and did a bit of a bike ride. Intervals, Andy. You understand what those are, I know. As I was doing it, I was listening to Dave Smith talk about Crowder and stuff. And actually, I thought he tied this in real good too, which is, there's always 2 sides of the story. And to not be the victim and to make the most of your what you have. There's that. And then I listened to Ben Shapiro, and he talks really fast and was going on about this. But then he started to talk about another story about CPS in a different state doing some shenanigans, and it blows your mind, and it gives credence and credibility to Mr. Ellis's type of story, which makes me okay. Anyway, that's all I have to say. So. Let's see what some of the people are saying here. Spud says he clearly referenced all his important friends. He wouldn't have doing that if he was not being honest, right? Hey, he talks later about Kiefer Sutherland and he goes into much more. So, okay, so the end of chapter 3, he gives this thing, and it's a whole thing he gives from his book. or some, I don't know, his diary, self-musings from the 2 days before that. I don't want to really, what's your reflection on that? Was it that he thinks that he needs to get help?
Yeah, it's kind of like an acknowledgement. It sounds like for the previous year, he's been doing some kind of therapy or something like that. And he talks about his ethical framework being flawed. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, it's kind of alluding to something, but he's never really says what it is. And hopefully in the next part, he'll get a little bit more into that. But it kind of leaves you just hanging,
Okay.
you know, and
It is.
just to draw your own conclusions as what's going on.
Right. And look, that's the important part. So let me just pull this up here to share. I don't even know if this is really going to help, but this is the Welfare and Institutions Code, California. And it's the 5150 for being institutionalized. And without breaking it all down, this is basically, they have to let them know you are being placed in a psychiatric facility because it is our professional opinion that as a result of a mental health disorder, you are likely a harm to yourself, a harm to someone else, unable to take care of your own food, clothing, So they have a pretty strict, detailed about what they have to do, and then to let someone out as well. Anyway, my point is on that, just when we're walking through this, it's not like, I mean, he portrays it that someone said 10 words and then there you go, he's in court. Now, does that mean it couldn't happen? Yes, obviously it could happen. And once again, call the police. I mean, call your attorney right away.
Yeah.
Right away. That never happened. Okay. Chapter 4, the liturgy of the compromised man. What's liturgy? What's that mean? Do you know? Liturgical? Is that the same basis?
That's what I think. I mean, if you asked me to define it right now, I probably couldn't do it off the top of my head. But to me, I just think of like the high church.
Yeah.
Like Orthodox or Catholic. I don't know. But that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, this started on March 5th was when he was institutionalized. It's now the 9th. He's still in this place. He's referring to, he likes to refer to a bunch of movies. I have heard of The Castaway, but I haven't heard of the other one. So anyway, so he's in this place. He's hoping to get out, and he finally gets a nice lady that works there to give him some options to get out. And I believe these are correct from what I've looked through with the Wealth and Institutions Code, Welfare and Institutions Code of the 5150. She said I had two options. First, I could request a court hearing where I would plead in front of a judge. I would have to wait a couple days to get a court date that might be scheduled weeks down the road. Second, I could ask for an immediate proceeding with a hearing officer, one of dozens of vaguely named title holders in the legal system that, to the ears of the complete layman fumbling through the fog in the first few days of the life implosion, dude, just get to it, are completely indistinguishable from one another. The nurse told me that if I didn't go that way I hoped, I would have no path to appeal and would have to wait and even longer to get in front of a judge. Mr. Risk Taker, I chose option 2. Okay, so he's going to go in front of them. And so
if this was you in this situation, which option would you choose?
Okay, well, you're assuming, okay, me and I'm in there and I'm of sound mind and body and everything. It's me mean, or is it me that's might have a legit reason to be held in an institution? I don't know. Look, this is the problem. Just like him, you're like, I'm saying, I just plead this case. The problem you have with that is the risk of the reward right away and possibly not putting all your ducks in a row. And there's a reason why they've done this, and you're just going to go plead yourself. So I have had multiple cases. Matter of fact, just in court yesterday with a client that he had to get a psych eval. So he went and got the psych eval. Worked out great. But I've had other ones where the other party is not quite there and they think that they are. So that's part of the problem you have with some of the people that might have a bipolar issue, as an example, which those clients did. They think that they're great, and so they're going to go argue their points, and then they get in front of someone and they're probably making themselves worse, right? So anyway, I don't know what his mental state was. Remember, without rest, some other things. So yeah, what would you do?
He just went through the ringer. I don't know. To me, it seems like I would want to go before a judge as soon as possible. So I'd probably choose option 1. Even if it defers it a few weeks, I'd still rather be before a judge than some caseworker.
Yeah. Right, because you'd almost figure that the standard should be a little bit higher too, right? As far as for them to hold you and incarcerate you, in a sense, that's what you feel like, rather than it's just this commissioner that's, for whatever reason with the social workers, which is what sounds like happened here, right? So
Yeah. And there's a line in here. He says, the Del Alamo social worker is one of the people who could be described as a true enemy, which I like that line, just knowing what I know about social workers. They're not really great people. They're typically losers.
Right. And from, if there's some social workers out there watching us, okay. Anyway.
Find a real job.
Right. And those are those ones that lied before, that we were just talked about in segment 1, right? That were lying before for CPS officers. Let's read a little bit of this. So he came into this room. The patient, this is what the police had recited. The patient stated to the police, "I'm sick of this shit. I'm going to harm the children." Okay. Someone called the police and alleged that someone heard the patient say, "I'm sick of this shit. I'm going to harm the children." And then he's like, casting a light on the stone of the altar of fair play, the hearing officer interrupted and demanded to know why there were 2 versions of the police statements directly at odds with each other. One I claimed I had said the words to the police, and another alleged that someone had called the police to tell them they had heard me say them. So he ends up, they said if he, I don't know if there's another part I wanted to read. Oh yeah. Your freedom is ripped from you. Your whole world is cuffed and stuffed, and you're reeling from the most profound betrayal in your adult life based on fabrication and hearsay evidence. And because you're human, you get a little agitated. The social workers jot down your agitation in their notes, sprinkling in a hint of malevolence. Thank you. Your wife and her mother and some doctor falsely claiming to be your family caregiver say that you, quote, don't quite seem yourself, unquote. And that's it. And that's enough to keep you institutionalized and paint you as a danger to your own children. Yeah, that part, I mean, look, we'll get into it more, but I get where he's in this situation. You've been to court, but have you been to like, besides the family, even that might've been a good situation. I went in there for a traffic thing once, and the officers there, and my law partner at the time he took the case, because you don't take your own cases. And this police officer is blatantly just lying, and I'm just baffled, and I'm getting way emotional, and I get how this is. And it actually has helped me take care of my own clients coming forward, because I could see the emotion that they have. And, as an attorney, you're not as invested. So have you had that kind of situation, or someone's gaslighting you and you're just like,
yeah, I mean, my BM definitely lied in court at one point. She said she was going to move back to Tennessee, which I knew was a total fabrication. And I was visibly agitated. It's tough. I've had to do jury duty, and just being in a courtroom, me, the type of person I am, everybody's in there tightly wound and well put together. And I just want to yell cuss words out in the middle of the courtroom. But, cooler heads do prevail, and I know if you're in a situation like this, it's tough and it's hard not to get agitated. And it kind of works in 2 ways. It's a double-edged sword. It's like either people want you to be extremely agitated, or they want you to be calm, or they don't understand why you're calm if you are calm. So it's like it's kind of a lose-lose situation, but just try to put the blinders on and stay focused.
Well, and this is also why, like, he's going before this, and at no point is he calling, once again, for an attorney, help you out. That's your agitation, all these things. I talk about clients when we go to court, and I'm like, don't roll your eyes. This is a business issue. The judge is going to, sometimes the worst things that happen are your client's reactions to the lies that are being told, right? You're just throwing your arms up and wanting to interfere. No, especially if it's something where they wonder if you're a danger and you can't control yourself, and then you're showing that to the to the judge.
Yeah, but it's totally understandable, especially somebody loses their kids, why you would be pissed off, and sometimes it's not something you can really control. It's
totally. Yeah. Have you seen the movie 12 Monkeys?
It's been a long time, but yeah.
Did it? Okay. I was thinking of that movie when I was reading this part here, because he just seems the psych ward, all these people that were helping him out and giving him money. So he comes out of this thing. His friend, the other insane people there, they give him some money to make some phone calls. He doesn't have a phone or anything like that, but he had that number on of his agent, so he's able to finally get a hold of some people, make some phone calls, because they said they would release him if he had a place to stay.
Yeah, and just to backtrack real quick, this is how much of a goober this guy is. The police gave him, set out a few things and said you can take one of three things, and it was a phone, something else, and a coaster with a picture of his wife on it, and he took the coaster with a picture of his wife on it.
You know, Andy, thank you. I thought that was just a stupid move at the time, but now you remind me that's...
Yeah, you're going to incarcerate me or take me somewhere. I want my phone with me.
Right.
Because I know if the first phone call don't work, I at least have my contacts. I can make the second one.
Right. But a coaster with the wife who might have put you in this place.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Well, it seems like he was real naive to this. I mean, he's still naive to this whole situation going through it.
Right. Okay. So they said, yeah, if you're able to confirm you have a place to stay, we may let you out tomorrow. And then he had to talk to a doctor. So then he was trying to find out a place to stay, and does he know somebody? And my whole thing was, you've just listed all these celebrities: Sharon Stone, Andy Garcia, Joe Pesci, Kiefer Sutherland comes up later. Call a celeb? I don't know.
Yeah. I wrote down a little note here. Were there no hotel rooms open, or do you have to, if they're releasing you from like a psych ward or something, you have to be released into somebody's custody?
So what's the question?
So if you're released from the psych ward, do you have to be released into somebody's custody, or could you just say, I've got a place to stay, I'm going to go get a hotel room?
So looking through there, I couldn't tell that was a part of it. And yeah, I don't think that was, you had to be released into someone's remanded to their custody, that they're responsible for you. I think it was more along the lines of, we'll let you go. Your wife doesn't want you at the house. Don't go there. Do you have a place? Otherwise it might've just even been to the, I mean, this is his point, but it might have even just been to the point of, they're like, you can stay here, you know, I mean, at some point they would kick you out, I'm sure. But, I didn't see anything that said that when they released him that they had to have someone sign for that. So yeah, that's a good question though. What do you think about his wife constantly asking him if he's taken his medication?
I mean, it seems like gaslighting if I'm going to take him at his word, but obviously, I mean, I'm a little skeptical because he's talked about, you know, some type of therapy, something going on. So, and his lack of sleep. I mean, it gives me cause for concern of, you know, maybe we're not getting the whole story from his side just yet.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know what severe sleep deprivation can cause some type of, what do they call it when you hit your head?
Concussion?
Yeah, well, not that, but just where you forget things.
Amnesia?
Yeah, some type of amnesia or something from lack of sleep.
I will say this. When I've had lack of sleep, I got pulled over once driving to my parents' house up in the Northwest. It was the middle of the night because I was driving and I was tired. And the cop's like, look, switch drivers. He's like, okay, you're not drinking. That's fine. But you're driving like you were. And he's like, you know, sleep deprived driving is actually probably worse than drunk driving. So I know, you know, when I haven't had sleep, it can be a problem. This guy hadn't slept in 3 days. That's what he said. His own admission.
Yeah. So
What do you do to you've had friends, you've partied. What can you do? What kind of recreational drugs can you do to keep yourself awake for 3 days? What do you think that would be?
Well, whatever it is, there must be some good ones floating around in Hollywood.
Yeah. Well, right. Okay. So he finally gets a hold of this Dr. Wood. I'm not sure who that is, but Dr. Wood is not an attorney. Once again,
that's his therapist, right?
I think so. Still a problem to me.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So he gets this guy. He's able to go out. Dr. Sharma releases him. What's this say? Confirming my suspicions, Adele Amo, social worker, was communicating with Dana. She called and asked if I was about to be released. So tantalizingly close to freedom, I would not let her get away. I lied. Good. So he's finally figuring out the game. He's not telling her. And, by the way, she confirmed that in her filings that he had not told her the truth on that. So there you go. Got a confirmation for you.
Good on him. He's finally figuring out that this is a dirty, nasty game.
Right. I had to decide where to go. Dana had told me I could not legally go home. Okay. in my condition, I didn't question this, which perhaps was one of the most fateful decisions of my life. I imagined strolling through the front door and hugging my kids, but didn't want any more conflict to derail my freedom. You and I don't know if we had a disagreement, but fateful, good or bad?
What do you mean?
So I took that as a fateful decision. So she said he couldn't legally go home. I took that as she had had some sort of protective, which I think he confirms later here, criminal protective order. So there's 3 types of restraining order. There's criminal, there's civil, and then there's domestic relations restraining order. Okay, a criminal protective order is issued out by the police, basically, or a judge related to that. And that is what she ends up having, which means it's just basically a restraining order. He couldn't go home. She restrained him from going there 100 feet from the house. So fateful, he said he just wanted to go home. It's a fateful decision. I took that as he made the right choice. And I thought we had a phone conversation. You were thinking that he made a bad choice.
Well, I just didn't know if at this point he knew that she had a restraining order. Let me go back and look real quick.
He said he could not legally go home, was from what she told him.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, he made the right choice not going. If she didn't have a restraining order, it could have gotten ugly going home. But I think if you're going to see your kids, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. If, it's proven that, you got out of your psych ward, you're not a harm to yourself or others. I wouldn't see any issue with him going to see his kids, even if him and his wife are having issues. Right. He could just stop by for a second, and say what's up. But
so then he got to go to this Brian's house, his friend, and he said this is one of his foxhole type of guys. It's one of the guys that would be in the foxhole with you. Some former. Now I had made comments, and by the way, we're going to bring Meredith in here because I want her to talk about some different stuff. But we had made some comments about how to avoid this kind of situation. And one of them I had said was pick better friends. Okay. I know he thinks he's got great friends in Hollywood, and your point was, look, I thought I had a good friend and he turned on me. I guess, and yes, I agree. But my kind of thing is, you kind of weed some people out and put those friendships to a test before you have to put them to a test, if that makes any sense. I don't think he had any of these kind of guys in his corner.
Well, in my specific case, I had who was supposed to be the godfather to Emma and one of my best friends, that I had known since I was 10 years old, going behind my back and messaging baby mama. And he didn't know her outside of, her and I's relationship. He met her through me. It's not like they were friends outside of that. And it was just real underhanded and rat-like. And yeah, it's just one of those things, you never know somebody till they show their true colors, and a friendship is only as good as, the test that it can withstand. And so this one obviously didn't make it through. And people might seem like they have your back on the face, but when push comes to shove, they will, some people just will, they'll turn on you. So,
right. Anything else in that chapter? Before we
I'd
go to
say
the next
if you're going to, and I understand wanting to talk about your case, a lot of this is like people got feelings around their kids and they're hurt throughout all this stuff. But just if you're going through something like this, like be careful who you're talking to about any of this stuff. It's okay to say that you're hurt and you're kind of going through it, but I wouldn't let on much more than that. And
finish that off before I say that was a great point.
Yeah, I mean, you start giving details of, what's going on, and, it's tough because in family court, they do call character witnesses to speak on your behalf or speak to your character. And if you got people that, are wishy-washy, it's going to hurt you more than help you.
Right. Okay, I'm bringing in Meredith. Meredith, can you hear us okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Yes. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Let me ask you, did you hear what Andy just said?
Yes, it's such good advice because I cannot tell you how many times somebody has like either a new significant other or a family member, an in-law who starts out on their side, and then like something happens down the line and then they switch alliances and then everything that you told them, they go to the other person with it. It happens so often that I say that Andy's advice is spot on.
So Meredith, you are also a family law attorney in the great state of California.
Yes.
How have you? Let me back up just a little bit because Andy did say some great points. And I, as a woman, I want to say this. So I want to ask you. I'm not a woman saying this. I want to ask you as a woman. I get this with girls like to go online and then they like to tell their story to everybody. That's a typical thing that they do. And so Andy's point would be, hey, keep it confined to a good friend or two. One, you're going to get advice from that one person. You're not going to shotgun everything. And then, you probably see this all the time. They post on Facebook, like this guy, their story, and they one-side it. And then all their friends jump on about how amazing they are. They're the best parent, And so is that good advice that Andy says, keep it closed-lipped, and are women more susceptible to this than men?
Well,
just say yes.
As far as I've seen, well, no, I've actually seen more men do it. I will say the woman who I am thinking of off the top of my head who did do it was absurd. Like, she was so crazy, probably like the second worst mom I've ever dealt with on the opposing side. But I will say that the court cannot issue a prior restraint preventing you from posting about the case on Facebook. It is a freedom of speech. It's been litigated. However, you can't harass via social media. And harassment can take the form of like disturbing the peace, but that, again, it's got to be targeted for it to be restrained. But you are allowed to post on social media. It's just a bad idea.
Yeah. I had a baby mama come to me. Her boyfriend was, dead baby daddy or whatever, played for the Niners. And before the child was born, they got a restriction though from posting on social media. It was specific about the kid. So it was just a little bit different, but
yeah, I mean, I would assume that's just a separate
privacy
kind of
thing.
Yeah.
Not so much about the kids. Okay. So what you've heard so far, Meredith.
Yes.
I mean, you're similar to me. You get a client in, they tell you the sob story. It's horrible things have gone wrong, and your senses probably go up, and you go, "Oh, let me read everything and find out what's going on." How have you done so far with this guy? And don't spoil the story with Andy here.
So, Andy, I have read the court filings, so just letting you know, I'm going to try not to spoil them. But as some people actually said in the YouTube chat earlier, a little bit of my ears pricked up when he kept name dropping famous people. And he is very loquacious, flowery writer, which I appreciate, honestly. But there is a degree to which he's rambling. And these are like little clues that let me know, okay, this guy might be insane. So whenever you get somebody like this coming in and you can get the vibes off the top, I would say, if this guy was in my office, I would say, oh, that's crazy. Let me see. Can you send the pleadings to me? Send me the restraining order, the filings, all of that. Because I want to see, because clients lie to you. I think I said this in the last time Tyler and I were on together. Clients love to lie to you. And they don't even necessarily know that they're lying. But there's been so many times in my younger careers where I would just believe my client off the bat. And then we show up at the hearing and there's a piece of evidence that directly contradicts everything my client said. And I'm like, dude, you just hung me out to dry. Like, this is why I tell me everything. Tell me the truth. We can deal with it. If it's bad, I will help you deal with it. But I can't be blindsided, because then we both look like idiots.
Yeah. Andy, you had an attorney, right?
Yeah. I had a big old butch lesbian chick.
Sweet. Did you lie to her?
But I didn't. No, but I didn't have like skeletons in the closet type of shit. Other than a close friend who had gone down sort of a woke path and was willing to like make shit up about me not being woke.
Oh, you're not woke?
No.
I will say.
All right.
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
People's political opinions are coming up more and more in family law cases. I would say that most often it's like he's super right wing, doesn't believe in the vaccines, believes in chemtrails, or like yada yada yada. People do bring that stuff up to try to prejudice it. I try to ignore it and not give it life, but it's starting to come up. So I would say if you don't trust somebody, maybe keep that under wraps, especially if you're like married to a lib and they have no hope of being red pilled. Maybe like keep that stuff to yourself.
I had a client. I went and got him. He had the child. Mom had filed anyway. There's some crazy stuff. I went to talk to her after the court case. She was a little crazy in court. She was well put together. Had a master's degree, so she was smart. And she had their child out late at night yelling at stuff. It was like 3 a.m. and the cops got called. Anyway, so dad got custody. And she's like, this is crazy. So I went to talk to her and I'm like, hey, look, we could probably resolve this, naive that I could resolve this thing out. And she starts telling me it was right after Trump. It was the night after Trump had been elected. And this was all his fault. And she starts going down this path. And I'm like, oh, you literally are crazy. And she was, it probably still is. And you can't resolve this story. She was arguing with a professor and it was a big deal. This is why she was out at 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, people like that probably should lose custody. But yeah. I mean, we've heard about the cases, right? And this is definitely political of parents losing custody for not affirming the gender of their child. And that's happening more and more across the country, even in rural places like Alabama, where people don't expect things to happen like this. And they say, get out of the cities, but this type of stuff is still happening in rural communities.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of the case regarding that issue right now. I have my second day of trial is on the 30th.
So Andy, this guy gets out of the 5150 hold. First of all, Meredith, have you had any 5150 issues? I mean, does it seem this easy to just incarcerate someone with that?
No, it's not. So that was my real first, like, legit clue that he wasn't being honest, because it is really difficult to get. I mean, okay, I won't say like really difficult, but you have to make certain showings to the police to get the 5150. And I think I said this in the chat earlier. There have been times where I've had cases where CPS or DCFS should have intervened, or the police should have intervened, but they didn't. And, we got to like say, fuck you for not doing it because this is what happened later. You prefer that not happen. Of course, as a libertarian, you want, it's better safe than sorry. You prefer the states not intervene. However, as the lawyer of these people, it can be a little bit annoying when they don't act, when you know that something shady is about to go down.
Yeah. Who's making all the noise?
You got somebody open a bag
my
of
dog.
over there?
Oh, okay.
So he likes to stay under my desk, and he's
hey, stop right there. We don't want to go down that route on this show.
Oh, no, not like that.
Oh, okay, sure.
Never. That's so bad.
Oh, okay. I didn't know about that. So, Andy, I'll start with you. What would be your advice to this guy? Let's say you're not an attorney, but you're definitely a smart guy. He gets out.
Andy, I really appreciate your advice and opinions on things. You've definitely learned a lot from your experience. It's obvious.
Not enough. No, so this guy gets out of the 5150 hold and he calls you up. And what is going to be your advice? Are you just going to like, hey, bro, or whatever? What are you going to tell him to do? I know you've read ahead and all, but still,
Are you asking me? So if I'm the friend that he calls?
Yeah. If he's a friend of your call, or if you ever, yes, sure.
If he calls me and he's like, hey, I got this situation going on, and all right, do I have my current experience, or have I never been through family court before? Current experience.
You are you. I'm not trying to compare him to this Brian guy. I'm just saying you are you, Andy. What would you do? Because he doesn't call an attorney as an example.
If he calls me up, you go get him out of the drunk tank or whatever, the loony bin, and you let him come crash for the night, let him spill his guts, and then first thing in the morning you take him to, you bust out the phone book or whatever, you look at lawyers and say, I'm taking you to see a lawyer first thing in the morning. We're not wasting any time on this.
But Andy, I want to see my kids. I'm just going to go over and see them. What do you think about that?
I would tell him also, that he needs to start taking good documents about every conversation that's had between him and his ex. He needs to document the time that he spent with his kids. If there is some type of therapy issue, list that, get that out in the open. whatever mental health stuff is out there. It's better to be open and honest about it than to pretend like you don't know and act like you're totally naive and play no role in this. But yeah, I'd say, the best thing you could do is take a journal and write times and dates of where you talk to your ex-wife and when, how much time you're seeing your kids or spending with your kids. And, try to avoid contact with her that's unnecessary. If you call, keep it short and concise and talk to her about the kids and the kids only. Don't try to talk about your failed relationship. Obviously, she's put you in the psych ward. The bridge is being burned. Like, stop trying to dig through the trash. As someone who digs through the trash for a living, it's not, you're better off moving on, and just focus on your kids and don't let the relationship distract you from, your relationship with your kids.
Same question for you, Meredith. Kind of like, what would you be telling? Now you're an attorney and you have to deal with these things. What would you be telling him as soon as he comes out in here and he's like, maybe I want to go see my kids or something? What are you telling this guy?
First thing I should just say, once again, Andy, that is incredible advice. It's pretty much the exact same advice that I would give. One of the biggest things that Andy said that was important was documenting time you spent with your kids. And one of the second things he said that was very important was leave your relationship drama out of the communications. From here on out, you need to treat every written communication with your ex as if it's going to be used in an exhibit in a court of law. Mm-hmm. Because most of my exhibits these days are text messages or emails. Yep. Secondly, I would say to this guy, I don't know from the pleadings versus what you've read, I'm not sure exactly what's clear at this point, but a restraining order against you is not in effect until you've been personally served. It seems like at this point, the guy had not been served. The wife told him he couldn't come home, which technically isn't true if he had not been personally served. Except that if he attempted to go in, she could have had the cops show up and serve him.
That was sort of my question earlier too. Why couldn't he just go home if he hadn't?
Right. So yeah, he would have been served, most likely. But he technically could have if she had not provided him with service while in the psych ward. And I have personally served somebody with a restraining order in a alcohol rehab. Unfortunately, we had to because he had a history of evading. But yeah, so until you are personally...
Let's not talk about your personal life. Let's keep it to business.
Until you are personally handed that restraining order, even if it's the EPO, by the way, the one from the cops, until you're personally handed it, it is not effective.
Right. Right. Exactly so. So let's say he comes to you, either one of you, and he's like, hey, she's told me I legally can't go to the house. And you're like, the service requirements, all this stuff. Would you advise him then, hey, dude, go ahead, go back and go say to your kids, I know it hasn't been served on you. I would say, don't go near the house. I don't want you anywhere near her. You're not calling her. We're going to work on this. I will get a hold of her and work through it. You're going to cut yourself off. It's 5-10 days at all. That's all you have to do. And it's a short amount of time for the whole lifespan that you're going to have with these kids. But trust me, these 5-10 days that I'm going to have you not in communication is going to be the best thing that's happened to you.
Yes. Well, I would also say the first thing I would do, because I've actually had this situation before, is I'd go online and I go, let me see if they filed something. Oh, they did. So that's probably what they meant. If she says you legally can't come home. But if I was a lay person, what Tyler just said is the correct advice is, I know it sucks. If we're mutual friends, I can speak to her. But yes, the 5 to 10 days before you're in front of a judge is nothing compared to the next 10 years until your kids are 18. And that is really hard advice for people to take, by the way. And I totally get it.
Yeah. Just having been through, he just got out of the psych ward. His whole life is crumbling in an instant. I mean, I can understand, especially having his emotional attachment to his kids. The first thing you get out, you want to do is go hug your kids. So I totally understand it.
Completely. And I what I said, I've used it many times, and a lot of parents, Meredith, I was DMing with you. I had a guy, just contacted me yesterday. He's basically lost all his kids completely because she had a restraining order against him that was bullshit. And we can talk about the way that the bullshit restraining orders are. But then he decided before we got to trial to violate it over 27 times. The trial had nothing to do with the underlying issues. It was all that he had violated. It was a no-brainer, and he easily it was against him. And then he just, it's a snowball effect. So this
you
doesn't
just
help
hand away your case at that
Right,
point when you
right.
start
So,
getting into these violations.
I'm like, it's a small price to pay. It sucks, but we can. And I've had another guy that this happened to, and I told him, short term, he went and did everything he was supposed to. 6 months, mom is out slinging meth, and he's got the kids, and he's, a friend of mine now, and he's a great guy, Andy. No, I'm just kidding.
The race to the courthouse steps, like, people need to realize, like, especially with these so the ex parte proceedings would be anything where you are not giving notice to somebody before filing, like a restraining order. And there are many times where the person just happens to get the order first, and you are, without your kids for some time. And then once everything is heard, maybe sometimes even months down the line, everything flips and you get the kids and they're out. It happens. I know, again, I can't imagine. I'm not a parent. I imagine it would be awful. But it is overcomable with certain steps. You just have to rein that in, because even if the underlying temporary restraining order was bogus, it was still lawful, and violations of a lawful order become a domestic violence incident in and of itself. So
exactly.
I'm just thinking about my personal case. I filed for an emergency petition of custody after my daughter's mom left the state with her. And she was an addict for a while. And I know she was going back to the town where she had started using. And that was kind of my plea, was like, I don't know what's going on. I don't have any communication. I've been cut off. I need to see my kid. We never made it to trial. And I know, like, they sent me through, rounds and rounds of mediation and kind of some of the pre-trial stuff. But it's tough, to deal with it, especially if you're a father losing your kid. You don't know who to turn to, and we're dudes. We're not going to go to therapy or something like that. You got to really have strong people in your court, that you can rely on and share certain sensitive information with. But just like I said earlier, be careful about who you're sharing it with. It's better if it's, like a family member, like your mom or dad, or somebody that you can trust and have a relationship with that's been tested, and that they're going to have your back.
I would say it's best to find that person that will tell you no when others might not. You get those yes people. They're just, you're doing the right. Oh yeah, that sucks. And then next thing you know, you're down this, avalanche of crap.
Yeah. And if you've never been through this, you don't know what to expect or how to go through it either too. A lot of times it happens to people, there's one party who's probably already consulted with a lawyer or an attorney and kind of knows where they're going with it. And the other person just gets smacked in the face with it. So, I mean, you got to kind of, it's a balancing act. You don't want to prepare for this kind of thing in a relationship, but I think it's important to know that this kind of stuff does happen. And, what are your options moving forward if you find yourself in a situation like this? Yeah.
So as we continue on with chapter 5, which is called Prelude to a Travesty. Now, Meredith is going to just enjoy some of this. So he has this friend, this guy said Brian, and Brian's the guy that would be in the foxhole with him. That's how he described himself. So he goes over to Brian's house. Brian's house was Brian was a dozen houses down the street from my own. Instantly, I'm reading this and I'm like, this is problematic. Once again, as my advice, just back off, leave it alone. I know it's hard to say that as, when you're in this situation, but if he was getting any kind of counsel from anybody, you just talk to that doctor, this would have been a prime thing of like, back off. It's obviously it didn't go well for you the first time. Let's just see what we can do.
Yeah. And I took a note down here. Apparently when he got to Brian's house, they were partying and drinking.
Yeah.
And he doesn't say if he was drinking with them or not, but it doesn't look good. If the police were to show up over there, something, God forbid, for whatever reason, and they're all drunk and stupid, even if he was sober, he still looks guilty by association. The cop's
Yeah.
going to make a note that they were drunk and partying or whatever. And, you've already got what appears to be a case going on. So try to fucking mind your manners.
So then he calls the wife from Brian's phone, because remember, he still doesn't have a phone yet.
After Brian gets drunk and passes out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he has not been served at this point? Yes or
No. Spoiler. That euphoria instantly died with a pounding on the door. My mind turned to ice, my reptilian brain instantly registering that no knocking at this hour could be good news, but not fully comprehending that it was related to the phone in my hand that he used at Brian's house. I opened the door to the police, and they grabbed me by the arms, pulled me outside, slapped on the cuffs. Dana had summoned them during our call, keeping me on the phone, stringing me along as the cops moved in to detain me. Now, Meredith, you had read some of the filings. Was he on the phone? Because it seemed like to me there was some confusion about whether he was actually on the phone or not.
Yeah, I believe in her filing she said he was in the yard of the house.
You're skipping ahead. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She had said something about him maybe being on the computer. So I don't know. There was some.
Wrong incident. Okay. Well, yeah. One thing I will say about this one is that if you are trying to delay getting served, block your number before you call them. Right. And this is not legal advice. You don't need to tell them where you're staying because, again, they could just have the cops come over and serve you. The sheriffs can serve restraining orders.
Now, I don't know if you heard us earlier when he was getting out. She had asked him when you're getting out, and he said no. So that was probably her trying to serve him, and that was a good thing he did there. He said no and evading it. But okay, it only goes so much. So Andy, he gets actually the mother-in-law comes down the street at this point, and she personally serves him. At least that's what he said. I don't know if you saw in the protective orders if it was her that actually was signed them, but I imagine that was probably the case. But they don't arrest him because once again, that's what you had talked about, Meredith. He hadn't been properly served. He gets served at this point, but once again, that's an incident later on you can talk about, which is he gets out of the psych ward. He's then 12 houses down. He's on the phone or the computer calling me, and it's 11 o'clock at night, and it's disturbing my peace.
Yeah, and this mother-in-law character seems like a real bitch. If I'm taking the story at face value, she seems like a villain. There's one note I made in here. Yeah, there's one note I made in here is your father only ever did one good thing in his life: provide the sperm for your existence, and that was what the mother-in-law would say about his ex-wife's father. So apparently, it seems like there is some type of this is ongoing with both of their families. Neither one of them seems like they have a good example of a family. And I've heard that line before from single mothers and calling their baby daddy sperm donors. And it makes my blood boil, but it just is what it is, And
by the way, I think this is my problem with some of this. And obviously if I dig into it a little bit too much I'm going to just keep repeating this. His overall corrections that he wants and problems that he has. We watched the Johnny Depp trial. Like I said, there are really some things to correct. But is he the guy that is this the test case that you want to have? I don't know. It reminded me of Kobe Bryant, where he's like, oh, the cops are they're so brutal. And then he has a picture of Castro on his shirt. And I'm like, I don't know that's the.
Are you talking about Colin Kaepernick?
Kaepernick. Why did I say Kobe Bryant?
That's your boy, your Niners guy.
Yeah.
Can I make a corollary point to this? This is like something that's really important for me for people to understand. The father's rights thing. Fathers are proven to be extremely important in their children's lives. However, this movement of partially good actors has been capitalized by bad actors to be like, yeah, it's the court's biased against me, blah, blah, blah. And people are ready and willing because they know the stories to just believe that. And then you find out all the facts and you're like, oh no, they had every right to treat you that way. Oh no, the court was not biased against you. You're crazy. So I would just encourage people to be careful about assuming every time a father doesn't get custody or is treated unfairly by the court to assume it's because he's the father, because bad actors are using the auspices of fathers' rights and bias to like join this movement when they really are not. It's not relevant to them at all.
And I think it does a disservice to people like Andy, who
Right.
have been fighting through it and did get some shit on, and are good people. So I don't like that.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Meredith, some of that stuff, when I first started going through this stuff, I started looking at some of that stuff, and there is value to some of it to some degree. But to me, it comes down to just hating women, which, I'm not very fond of women myself, but the real problem is the laws. I don't blame the person collecting a welfare check. I blame the people making it possible for the person to get a welfare check. So I'm not going to blame the woman for taking advantage of an already fucked up system, and it takes two to tango. So I have to acknowledge my own responsibility in this too. Maybe I knocked up a crazy chick. Maybe, I should have thought better about who I, married or had a kid with, those kind of things. But yeah, I think ultimately they're striking at a lot of times the wrong route. And to me, these problems could go away to a large degree if, we had a better legal system and it wasn't a monopoly on family courts.
It's the classic case of lying about a rape does a disservice to actual victims. I saw somebody had commented like how women have weaponized family court against fathers. How bad actors have weaponized family courts against fathers. I will have to say, I've been practicing for about 9 years at this point. I work in California, so I believe that we are one of the most gender neutral states in terms of how this is dealt with. I have not seen in my time particular bias against fathers. That is not to say it doesn't exist. I know people from other states who have told me horror stories. What I could say to that is it doesn't matter. Two wrongs don't make a right. Latching on to some movement when it's bullshit is stupid. So just like the girl who said Aziz Ansari, sticking his fingers down her throat was akin to rape, that's inappropriate too. So I'm just saying, beware of bad actors who are going to use the father's rights things to behave legitimately, abusively, and crazy, and then be like, oh, everyone's against me.
Yeah, some of them can definitely speak to more of the cultural issues, especially like hypergamy and things like that. And there is value in that. But unless you're getting sound legal advice from them, and you have to play the game. This is what it is, you don't have another option. It's not like you can call another family court and weigh the two rulings against each other.
I would say to push back a little bit to you, Meredith, I think where the courts have gone awry, and it's just all the legislature that's dictated this, is with the restraining orders on family courts. It's so, you said there, it's from abuse to disturbing the peace. Like I sent you a text at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, that kind of shit. And then the ramifications, it's really your due process gets put back, and it's not presumed innocent at all. It's like, oh, you're guilty. Here's a restraining order. And then it's a snowball effect, as I described with the guy that violates, because all he's trying to do is see his kids, literally that guy.
100% true. The domestic violence laws in California are so broad that you almost can't help but trip over them. Disturbing the peace is a subjective thing that says they've disturbed my mental and emotional wellness, essentially. I think all of us have at one point or another, like I joke with my friends all the time. I'm like, bitch, I'm gonna kill you. And then if you took that text message and showed it to the court, oh my God, she made death threats against me. That's the kind of stuff that I see, and those people get stuff granted. California put itself in this terrible position by making it so broad. Nobody is going to be able to take it back because they're going to get accused of being against victims. So now, I'm telling you, literally excess phone calls and text messages get you a domestic violence restraining order. And people will come to my office be like, it's not domestic violence. And I'm like, well, by the definition of that we all know of violence, no, it's not. In terms of the statute,
By the way, the Violence Against Women Act, I think the Republicans a few years ago tried to repeal some stuff because it was just way over the top. And of course it was, you want rape.
I know I know the specifics of that.
It's all or nothing.
people can use the Violence Against Women Act in immigration cases to basically like get a way to stay in the country after they've gotten a divorce. And the person who's been accused they can never see the petition, explain their side of the story or anything. So you could literally make something up out of whole cloth, and you'll be allowed to stay in the country for however long it takes for them to finish. And the other person, by the way, might be none the wiser that you even did this. So that was what they were trying to repeal, and it did not work because of what that said.
You could possibly lose custodial rights throughout what you're talking about, this Violence Against Women Act, or no?
I actually don't know about that. My particular experience with it wasn't an immigration case. The Violence Against Women Act, I don't recall it being used in general in California cases or domestic violence, but it's possible. But again, if then that would be that person making the allegations public, which they wouldn't have to do if they didn't bring it up. So
I imagine, Andy, without knowing a lot about that, is you file a restraining order. Look, this person's violated the Violence Against Women Act or whatever. You could always claim something that's happened if there's any kind of findings, put it in yours, and now reference that as evidence that they're, bad guy or whatever. I mean, this lady does that for him being in the 5150 hold even.
Yeah. So, real quick, just to my little point earlier about the mother-in-law being a total bitch, and and people playing this game to their advantage. The mother-in-law says, "I was married to a law enforcement officer, and I'm going to use every legal tool at my disposal to ruin my son-in-law. He'll end up killing himself or rotting away in a mental institution."
Now, assuming that that's true.
Assuming that's true. But yeah, I mean, if you're in this, all's fair in love and war, people are going to take advantage of the system and use every tool to their advantage.
The guy that I talked about that had the multiple violations, one of the things, this is a 20-year marriage. She claimed that he had raped her. Okay. She testified to this. It was their first date. Not raped. Let me take this back. He had threatened to kill her. That's what it was. It was their first date up in Sonoma, and he's like, they're driving out there, and she's like, "Oh, my cell doesn't work," and he's like, "That's because I'm just gonna drive you out here and kill you." Well, okay, they finished the date. They obviously got along. He was making a joke. He does this all the time. That was her claim, that he had made an attempt to kill her. That's
shit like that to people all the time.
Right. And that's how this thing got perpetrated. And then, he made all the mistakes that we are trying to tell people not to do. Okay, Andy goes to Brian's house. He gets served. Then he leaves. He's going to be arrested, and some big guy intervenes. Could you ever figure out what this guy was about? This Drew Gomes that intervened. The cops didn't arrest him. And then this guy goes off with him, and he's like some bodyguard.
Yeah, I mean, he tells it a little bit later, kind of who he is or what his deal was towards the end of this part one. But at this point, no, I was like, this seems like something weird is going on, and I've got alarm bells going off in my head. Why is there some random person you've never seen intervening in person on your behalf between you and the police? Like, it's not like somebody just walking down the street like, "Hey, man, maybe you should chill out," or something like that. Like, this guy was that. The timing was too perfect. You know what I mean? It's more than just coincidence,
So this guy intervenes, he helps him out. He then goes to his friends, and the friend and husband and wife that's his friend, they're good. They help him get his phone and I think his car. He goes over and confronts Kiefer Sutherland, whose wife is involved in this. They're friends. Kiefer won't help him, get help. Kiefer Sutherland.
No, I'm wondering who his wife is. Is she famous?
Look for a text message that he sent her.
Oh, the Kelly chick?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So it's his agent's wife, right? And she tries to go to his house to maybe try to smooth things over with his now ex, Dana.
Yes. Yeah, so he gets that. And then somehow this Drew guy gets him to, am I skipping ahead?
Wait, can we just clarify one thing for everybody? This guy's name is not actually Greg Ellis.
Right.
So if you're looking for anything, it's like Jonathan Reese or something like that. So if anyone wants to look into it, look up, because they have to file it under his legal name, Jonathan and Dana Reese, Rees.
Yeah, so this guy intervenes. He ends up going to his agent's house. He talks to agent and his agent's wife. I personally would have not wanted the wife to go over there to try to smooth things over. I think that could only just serve to agitate things worse. Obviously, the wife is doing all these things for a reason. You're not going to be able to just show up and persuade her out of it. And if anything, it's just going to make things worse.
Right. But I mean, that's the type of things that friends will do. So.
Yeah. But I mean, it was nice of her to offer to do that and try. But just from my personal experience, like it would not be a good thing to try to do.
Once again, it was they kept him out of trouble though. They got his car, they got his phone, they didn't let him go over. I thought that was at least some people that were speaking sanity.
And this bodyguard guy, Gomes or whatever, is helping him out. And he seems just real ready to accept the help and not question who or what this guy is about.
Yeah. So then later on, there's this guy named Kevin Berman. You call me the facilitator. So he's not the same guy that stepped in before. So now he's got another person.
Yeah. It's like the bodyguard took him to this guy.
Yeah. And there's too many people. And then this guy convinces him, Meredith, to go to not a psych ward, although I think that's what ends up it is. He just doesn't describe it as such. Someplace in Arizona for some sort of therapy. Some
mental therapy rehab.
I was wondering how we ended up in Arizona at one point.
So this happens often, Andy, which is where a client's going through this thing and maybe you tell them, okay, hey, look, restraining orders as an example. It's against my guy. You know what? Let's just go. You might be ordered to do anger management, or for kids, you might be ordered to do parenting classes. Let's get ahead of the game. Let's just go and do it. Well, I'm not I said, doesn't matter. Go and do it. If the court orders it to you, now you've got it done. Or maybe you learn one thing out of there. That's good.
Yeah.
So
same goes with child support.
Yeah.
Same goes with child support. Start sending child support before you're ever even required by the court to do so.
Exactly.
It will be credited against future payments. At least in California. Actually, I've heard maybe Arizona doesn't do that, but California does.
Yeah, because it's not effective until filing. But then anyway, so good advice, Andy. You're going to be my paralegal someday.
I know, Andy. Like I would, if you're like a dream client at this point.
Can he pay?
Hopefully,
That's a dream client.
Well,
dream client's going to pay.
I can't pay, but hopefully, I never have to end up in either one of your offices. Hopefully, I don't have to end up in this situation ever again.
Yeah.
If I can help it,
And your daughter is beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. She's got a big enough head as it is already. Don't gas her up.
This guy says the other option, according to the facilitator, was for me to enter a treatment facility as a way of charting new history that would show the powers that be, namely the authorities at DCFS and the future judges, that I was proactively taking steps to address the issues that had resulted in my incarceration. He's like, but I don't have these issues. And like, doesn't matter. And I was like, yeah, that's not bad advice. It depends. Andy, you made a point real early on, which was taking responsibility. I always tell this to my clients. It's one thing, like they go in there for mediation and the baby mama has a new boyfriend. It's like, you don't care about him unless he is a problem, like danger. If you've made mistakes, own up to them and say what you're doing to correct them going forward, because they're going to find out. So you have made that comment, and it's almost kind of like what you're doing here, but I don't know that he's willing to accept any kind of.
Even if you don't think it was a mistake, you can at least admit as a man, say, yeah, I put my dick in crazy,
Oh,
like
shit.
that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I knocked up a chick that I probably shouldn't have, let me reflect on that.
Yeah. Okay. So what else does he have here? He meets with this Dr. Wood person an hour later. Kevin and I meet with Dr. Wood to discuss my fate. It was decided the next day I would fly to Santa Fe, New Mexico, that's what it was, and check into the Life Healing Center to address the as yet identified quote unquote addiction. So they want him to go there to do the addiction. Okay, we're going to do a spoiler alert here, Andy. Meredith, what was the accusation of when he was when the cops came to get him?
That he was on cocaine.
There you go.
When he was at the Foxhole guy's house?
No,
before
day one.
Oh, hell yeah.
So he goes into the facility. Remember, he was up for 3 days straight. What can keep
By the
you
way,
up for 3 days?
That's some crazy cocaine. I was thinking meth, but
Well, he's got
So-
Hollywood money, so he's probably got, he's not just buying small amounts.
Now, once again, this is part of her filings. She said he was tested positive. She said he tested positive for cocaine in the facility. I imagine when he's signing over all this stuff, when they go to trial, she's able to present this to him, or, to the courts at no problem. So I imagine this addiction thing here that he's
That
talking
is
about
actually an interesting thing that comes up later.
Okay.
His records.
Yes.
And you have to be on a lot of cocaine to pop positive for cocaine, because it's in and out of your system within a few days too.
3 days usually.
Wow.
Yeah.
You guys know
Unless
way too much about
you're a habitual user.
Right. It's just always in your system.
I actually think it might come out sooner if you're habitual, because it's a metabolite that shows up. So if you're metabolizing it,
What if you do a hair follicle test, which are not admissible in court?
Oh,
but
well,
they
that's
might have-
that shows if you did like LSD when you were 10.
Yeah. Right. So, Andy, you're at home, or your baby mom is at home with the kids. You're out of the state on business. You're hauling garbage trucks, completely different state. You leave her. She's got your daughter. Somehow she gets out of there and she gets tested, and she's been positive for cocaine while watching Emma alone. Is that a problem?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, in my personal case, that was my concern. I never even got to get her tested, but as far as my knowledge, she was clean. But stuff like that, when you have drugs in the picture around kids, obviously, there is cause for concern. And if you're the parent that's not an addict, you're going to be concerned, and you're going to do everything to protect your kids.
Yeah.
Because it's not just like drugs, it's the lifestyle that comes with the drugs too, and the other people that are around and things like that.
He does say here, he goes, although I was not an addict in the medical sense of the term, I was floundering and disoriented. I was also struggling with a sense of right and wrong, invested in rationalizations for my life. For that reason, I enthusiastically agreed to the outpatient plan, and thus was discharged from the Life Healing Center, in which I boarded a plane bound for Los Angeles. So he goes back home. Part of the thing he talked about his wife taking all their money and kind of closing her out of the bank accounts. That's disturbing on the fact that it happens, and I understand that. But what clients need to always understand, and people, when you start going through these, unless you're dealing with this cash, it's always traceable, and it'll get rectified. We'll work it out in the end. It's not something to break into the house over or something like that.
Yeah, unless you're willing to just kiss it goodbye anyways and just say fuck it, if you're going to fight for it.
No, because what we look at, they're separated now. So we'll look back at those data separation, those values. If she's taken money out of we can trace all this. These people have money too. They do a forensic accounting. It's a no-brainer. Okay. Once again, unless it's cash. I did have a client comes in and goes, my wife works at this casino. She's got $90,000 of cash in the closet. I'm like, we got to do something with that. You can't just take pictures. So he actually went and deposited at the bank, and then she destroyed the house because whatever. The point is, we put it in the bank, and then we had to distribute it later. So
sometimes with something like money, I would say to a client, like Tyler said, we're going to rectify it later. And it's not always a bad idea to let them do something that could be used against them later.
Yes.
Especially if you're trying to maybe get a competing restraining order. Yeah. I don't know about other states. Again, I'm talking California. Financial abuse is a domestic violence under the statute, and coercive control, which is basically any sort of action that could prevent a person from leaving, like taking away their resources.
Okay.
I've gotten restraining orders on that. And in many states, though, you also have to realize, like any community property state, even if it is the money you earned in an account that is in your name only, if you earned it during marriage, it is community property, and you have an existing interest in the community property of you and your spouse. So she has a right, ostensibly, to those accounts, as long as she's spending it on the necessaries of life. She can't go buy herself a $20,000 diamond bracelet. She can go hire an attorney with your money.
Yeah.
Andy,
that
shit sucks. I hate that shit.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it is. And it really can put, I won't get into too many personal stuff. So he comes out of this facility in New Mexico. He then talks a little about his childhood. It sounds like a shitty childhood. Once again, we talked about his mom putting him on a shock blanket before. Now he talks about his dad wasn't really around. I mean, these are problems and reasons why we've talked about men are important in the children's lives.
Yeah, and you know, it's once it happens, it kind of sets forth a generational curse too, you know. And I've seen friends of mine now, you know, growing up, they were kind of crazy and stuff, but they were still my buddies. And then I realized now that I'm older, their dad wasn't around, and now I look around at the guys who didn't have their dads around, they're all overdosing or in prison. So, and you know, and they're going through the same thing where they're separated from their kids, and it just creates a cycle.
Yeah, that's why I'm cucking myself out for my stepkids that I'm adopting. So, all right. That's a
hey, you're better off not.
I forgot
you're
about
better
that.
off. Just abandon them, Tyler. Just abandon them.
That's an. Do you know about that whole joke?
Yeah, I was in on that with. I think you came in.
Oh yeah, that's right. You
and I
were
responding to me, but I was like, "Where is that definition anywhere?" And they're like, "Wikipedia."
Yeah, of all places. Okay, so he kind of talks about some other stuff in here, and then I thought he would talk about this where he decided to go to the house. Now, this is, I believe, if there was a EPO that they had issued on him, which was in effect, but it expired at the close. Emergency protective order. Yeah. Okay. It expired at the close of, and I think I actually have it here, but maybe I'll pull it up. Close of business on the day that he decides to do this. Okay. So that's, I don't know if you're going to be able to actually see this here very well. Let's try this one.
It's super hard to read.
Right. So here's a protective order. It's hard to tell what date this is. Although that's the second one, the 26th. This is what is the first one? Oh, spoiler. What happened here?
So he served him on the 19th of March 19th at 2015 at 1:30. I guess that's 1:30 in the morning. Oh, so that would expire at 1:30 in the morning 1 week later.
Well, this it shows right here. It's March 18, and it says the order will expire at the close of the court business day on, and it says March 18, 2015.
Oh, are you looking at a different one than me?
What's that date at the bottom? The 3/11/2015.
That's when it was served, I believe.
Oh, I think we are looking at a different one than me.
Yeah, there's a second one as well. I can't really. It's someone signed.
Oh yeah. I see.
So the point being here, Andy, is that she had a protective order. It expired that day, so he could go. Yeah, he can go to the house, which he does. He goes at 11. Would you advise for that to happen? To just squeeze in right after the EPO is expired?
No, hell no. I mean, I wouldn't have gone over there even if it was expired, not without a lawyer, without police. So I have some type of witness on my side that's like, hey, I'm just coming to see the kids. Even if you don't want me coming in the house, just send the kids out and we can talk. I can talk to my kids for a little while, 30 minutes or something, get in, get out. And yeah, this is totally stupid and brain dead. And he's going uninvited. And
yeah, so
it just hurts his case tremendously.
I arrived at the house at 11. I had entered my home thousands of times, master of my domain, but now I hesitated. I placed my bag in the driveway and contemplated at least the least disruptive way to see my boys and talk to Dana about our future. I still believed we had a future. You know, Meredith, this probably happens to you a lot too as well. Someone files a restraining order against your person and your client comes in and they're like, this is such a bogus. It's not even true and it's horrible. And then for some reason it gets resolved, or during the time they're like, I'm going to go back to her. And I'm like, this is someone who is willing to portray to the police, to the courts, that you're a monster, and you said it was a lie, and you're going to go back. Does that ever? I mean, I know men are stupid and women too, but that doesn't.
I've never seen it work. It might be like a couple of years. They always come back. They're I can't believe it. 2 years ago, I thought we were gonna be fine, and I'm like, oh no, I knew I'd see you again one day. Also, if you were to do this, you, as Andy said, there's something called a civil standby.
Yeah.
Police will accompany you. Yeah. And it's not like you're not calling the police like 911. It's that they'll accompany you and be your witness. And it's always good to have a witness. Always.
Yes. Yeah. I tell people when they start to get split up, Stay away from the house. Only go there with someone so that, it's not he said, she said. Sorry, Andy, what were you saying?
I mean, I understand the impulse of thinking that you could potentially get back together, rectify the situation, and just wanting to go back to the house. But, and this goes back to just being slapped in the face with this stuff and not knowing, you think you're not doing anything wrong. The restraining order or the protective order is expiring. You just want to go by the house and see the kids.
Yeah, I know.
At this point, he still hasn't hired a lawyer, I don't think.
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's fucked up, but you gotta, once you're in this game, you gotta play by the game. And I like that you said, there is some kind of underhanded things you can do on your behalf, Meredith, where you're talking about, dangling the cheese of whatever the financial.
Let them do it.
Yeah. You just give them the rope and they'll do the rest. But it seems like this guy is doing it in large part to himself. And he's going through all this stuff, and it's like, I'm wondering at what point is he going to get the picture? Like, just get it,
If you're ever served with an emergency protective order, I say that is the time to hire a family law attorney. Invariably, a domestic violence restraining order will be filed subsequently. Even if, you talk to us before then, that's fine. But just because an EPO expires doesn't mean that someone's not coming for you in another way.
Yeah.
And if they don't, cool, all you did was have a consult. But
yeah, and this is not sorry to say, but this is not the time that you can start being technical in your stuff. It's not going to work out in your favor, because the court will look at some point and say, like this guy, my delusional quiet confidence was amplified by a small technical inducement. Dana's restraining order was temporary and had by that time expired. Literally like 4 hours, right? I was all too aware that if I called her on the phone, she would immediately call the police, but I wasn't legally prohibited from entering the property. And I still clung to the prosaic notion that if I could just speak to her, we could find some resolution to this ugliness. So he rang the door. I don't think he rang the doorbell, but he went into the back door and broke a window, went into there, talked to her, and her dad was in the house. Said something to the kids, and the kids basically said, "Dad, is your brain still broken?"
that sucks.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, this seems like something a cokehead would do.
Right. Now, I do want to say, I mean, I've been my wife and I have got, had some arguments and stuff, and it gets me a little crazy. And then the kids, they get you very crazy, especially if you're being gaslit and everything. So I get what's going on here, but it's our purpose of this is to, one, bring out the entertain people, bring out the truth, and then to help people not make these mistakes going forward. So
I'll say one of the biggest things that this is a men versus women thing in divorce, and I think Tyler has talked about this before, where men don't prepare for court as well. In these types of situations, I've noticed in general in just regular relationships, and then also in court-involved relationships, men will get emotional, and men aren't necessarily used to being hyper-emotional. So they, I know that when I get emotional, I'm similar to a man. I'm like one-track mind. Women get strategic. So
yeah.
That's something that you need to be aware of, like that if something like this happens to you, your emotions as a man, plus the testosterone, it's just going to be like, oh my God, I'm going to fix it. If I just do this, I'm going to go over there. This is my house, blah, blah, blah. It's not, take a breath, because you can bet that the chick already's got some sort of plan going on, and that you're just, walking into her trap. So
he wasn't arrested initially, right? No, he waited for the police, and they it was too evocative and yeah. So you're right. They did take him in. His action. He goes, my actions meant. Was there anything in there you wanted to read that you were highlighting, Andy? I'm sorry.
What page are you on right now?
Like 50, 51.
50? No, I don't have anything.
Okay, I'll just read this last part on 52. My actions meant hours of solitary confinement in a police cell before a prompt return to a mental facility. Third one. Yeah. So Meredith, maybe take us back. So the New Mexico one, was that from what you can tell, do you remember, was it because I think the wife referenced in her pleadings that he was in a hold there as well.
Yes. Yeah, he was in New Mexico as well.
Do you know if that was a mental facility as well, or was it an addiction?
A mental facility.
Okay,
I believe it was a mental facility.
But that's what's odd as well.
Well, a lot of those places, by the way, rehabs and mental facilities kind of combine. A lot of those
maybe
places
that was
similar.
Okay. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Even worse,
especially if you're rich. By the way, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because rich addicts don't necessarily want to go somewhere that's like such and such addiction treatment center. It's going to be like
Betty Ford.
Yeah.
I'd only vaguely heard about. I was about to, I don't know, harassment awaited me, readied by professionals inside on the fringes of family law, a wild west where the foundational precepts on which you thought your life rested are completely inverted. So there you go. He's back into another hold. Keep going, Andy.
There's a few parts where he talks about kind of being a Byzantine maze, and that, to me, that like really made sense, especially with my experience. Like, I don't know what to do. My kid's gone. Yeah. What are my options of recourse here? I think if you can resolve things amicably without having to go through courts and stuff like that, that should be your first option. If you're willing to come down and sit at the table with, whoever, the mother or father, and kind of work out maybe a parenting plan or a co-parenting plan or whatever. I would not get my hopes up about getting back together. I'm cautious about that sort of thing, even if it's not in court and there's no restraining orders or anything like that, even if you just split amicably. Just because, if you're willing to leave with someone's kids, it says enough to me already. But, being a layman and going through this process, it is kind of a maze, and you're like, you are in an emotionally charged state. Your kids are gone, and you're kind of trying to walk a tightrope, and you don't know necessarily what the right thing to do is. And it's not like you can, unless you got tons of cash at your disposal, it's not like you can call your lawyer up, for a therapy session. Like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this like every 5, 10, 15 minutes. Like, you don't want to do that either. But, if you could just get somewhere and chill out. And if you are going to do something like show up at the house and break in to see your kids, which I would not recommend doing. But I mean, if you're going to go bring the cops for a civil standby, discuss it with your lawyer before ever even making the decision to go over there.
Yeah. This blew me away that this guy with a decent amount of money wasn't at all hiring counsel. I mean, that's kind of like, step one, you just have him on retainer to do that.
Also, but I think he was his agent. Like, why his agent didn't call counsel for him is beyond me.
His doctor would. There's another one. Oh, that facilitator. There's all kinds of people that didn't that failed him in that respect.
Not like there's not enough lawyers in LA.
Yeah. So there was also now this is the wife's filings, and maybe when you've read the transcripts, you can tell us if this is true or not. She'd also said that 17 years earlier he had been in, I think, a mental facility and had a bipolar disorder diagnosis.
Yes.
Maybe that's why she was telling him to take his meds.
It was bipolar, substance abuse disorder, and narcissistic personality tendencies. So NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, is not what he was diagnosed with. So she says he was diagnosed with narcissistic tendencies. I don't think that's an actual diagnosis. Yeah. It might have been something that the therapist said about him. But bipolar disorder is
DSM nowadays. They put anything in that DSM.
That's true.
And by the way, people say that all the time, like, "Oh yeah, I'm married to whatever," and she was diagnosed. She was diagnosed with whatever years ago.
It's borderline, narcissist, and bipolar.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tyler. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying they make those claims. Sometimes it's like you're married and it's like, yeah, I've gone through, maybe you're in counseling together and you've disclosed that happened. Not everyone has the documents to prove that, and they're not going to get those unless you waive your privilege for that.
But also, like, your personal opinion of them being bipolar, borderline, or narcissist, it does not matter.
No.
Like, you could have read it all and, think they fall under it. Stop. I'm not putting that in a court filing for you.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like the TV personalities that try to diagnose people with mental disorders.
Right. That's always a good thing. She files a restraining order. She serves it on him. The next day, he received an email from a lawyer Dana had retained, which I wasn't completely sure how to interpret. Later, I would find out it was a notice of dissolution of marriage. That is Dana's legal notification that she intended to divorce me. It was delivered electronically. So he then goes and finds an attorney himself. It sounds like a horrible match for him. Two women that had fought in the Kim Bassinger's attorney and Alec Baldwin's attorney. Well, now those two attorneys were going to be against each other. He didn't have much nice things to say about his own attorney.
Well, he spent, what was it, $10,000 down for a retainer?
It was more than that, wasn't it?
Shit, that's less than I charge.
30, yeah.
Oh, that's 30. More than I charge.
But he said $1,000 an hour, and I'm not at 1,000.
That's more than I charge.
Yeah.
But that is common for LA.
What page are you on right now, Tyler?
At 60. He was pontificating about a bunch of shit that I just ignored.
Okay. Well, just to kind of reiterate some of the things that I was saying.
If you have stuff in there that you want to put in, please.
Yeah, on page 60, I thought this was a good line. Divorce won't wait for you to get your life together, which I thought was good advice and kind of speaks to some of the things I was saying earlier, you know?
Yeah. Exactly. Later that day, I lay in a fetal position on the floor in a dark apartment, crying like a baby in the face of divorce machinery. The phone rang. It was Vicky. Without so much as a greeting, she barked. She got bogan. She filed first. Okay.
Vicky is the name of his lawyer.
Yeah, Vicky's his lawyer, and that's the opposing counsel. So these were two that had gone. This is the problem I have now that I think is, and maybe Meredith, you can enlighten me on what your take is, and Andy as well. So let me read this. However, at that moment, I was more interested in her second mysterious sentence and the significance of she filed first. Oh, the questions of the naive. The significance is beyond description. This was the beginning of my agonizing education in family law, American style. So he goes on to say here that being the respondent, or maybe I should just find
definition.
It's literally not true. I can't even wait. It's not true. The only time it's true is if it's a DVRO where you're the protected party versus the restrained party. That's the only time the timing matters. Being respondent has literally no effect on anything.
Well, that's what I wrote in my notes too. And I was curious to see Tyler's reaction to this, because he gives the definition for petitioner and respondent, and it kind of makes it seem like, oh, whoever files first has an advantage. And I wrote down here, just petitioner and respondents didn't make a difference in my case, because I was the petitioner.
They don't. They literally don't, unless the petitioner is the state.
It signifies that I filed the petition and I filed the response. That's literally it.
Yeah. I did bracket out one line in here. He wrote, "It is not an exaggeration to call the divorce industry an anarchic, untamed cesspool," which I would prefer it be an anarchic, untamed cesspool as opposed to a monopoly.
Cesspool, anarchist, no. But untamed cesspool is good.
So he goes, by definition, if the mother is the petitioner, the father becomes a respondent, the equivalent of the defendant. The respondent is immediately at risk of being cast the de facto villain of the piece, continually burdened with disproving the blizzards of allegations leveled against him, regardless of their truthfulness, and proving their supreme contrite, praying for the mercy of the court, and working tirelessly to reform their defective character. Always? No, of course not. But the rot of the system means that the innocent man is less susceptible to an instant assumption of guilt. So he goes on about this, and it's just bullshit. It's sad, and that's the name of his book, which is The Respondent, which is all about he's behind the eight ball with this, and it's absolutely not true. Yes, the restraining orders type of, but even those they go more along that. Yes, it's petitioner and respondent, but protected and or I don't know, not unprotected person.
I'm saying in terms of like the timing, that's the one that matters.
Yeah.
But I mean, a respondent, so like a petition, you file the petition. In California, it is like basically an introduction to your case. No court dates get set off of the petition. If I'm the respondent and I want to file my response to the petition, okay, I'm participating in the divorce is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
You can be the first one to file a motion, a request for order, and they can be responding to yours the entire time. I can actually, off the top of my head, I think most of my cases that I've like kicked ass in, I've had the respondent as my client.
And so this was sad coming from someone who's going through the California system, which we're dealing with, which is just completely bogus.
Y'all are much more familiar with the California system. I'm
It
curious
has
to know,
literally
like,
no effect.
is there any data, like, as far as like just in pure custody cases, you know, who is more likely to win, just from a number standpoint, petitioner or respondent? Is there any of that kind of data out there?
No, I will say he might have a point about because actually Sal is Mind Pump, big workout guy. He mentioned this the other day online, which is I think 80% of, I don't remember what the number is. It was high volume of women are the ones filing. Now that does, I mean, that's more of a societal thing than your preference in court. The fact that she got to the court first and is doing this because she, you know, her life's over, doesn't want you. That's a completely different aspect than are you still going to be okay to be the respondent? Now, if you're dueling on different jurisdictions and venues, maybe that's an issue. We often do where one party files and the other party files not knowing that they've done that. And then we just do a thing where we consolidate and make the other petitioner the response. So the court literally doesn't care about that.
Yeah, I would say there's probably a little bit of a difference in pure custody, like paternity cases versus marriage cases. The only reason it would be is not because of like the delegation of who's who. It's because my assumption that I'm working off of in that is that the person who's petitioner in a pure custody case is usually going to file a motion at the same time. Whereas they don't necessarily do that in divorce because there's usually a little bit more of a expectation that we can work on things in a divorce versus a pure custody battle.
Yeah. Emma says hi to everybody. She wants to come say hi. Say, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Hello, pretty girl. Your hair is awesome.
She said your hair is awesome, and she called you pretty, and she said hi. Her name's Meredith.
Hi. Oh, she's so cute. So I would think in those instances, sometimes it might be because usually in a parentage case, the person filing already kind of has de facto custody. By the way, before custody motion is filed, the biological parents have an equal right to their children, even if they're happening to like just be in the possession of the other party. That doesn't mean that you don't have the right to them. But none of what I just said is actually backed up by statistics at this point. I'm just guessing that that's how it is.
Okay. Well, and obviously, you know, the correlation doesn't equal causation, you know.
Yeah.
And you could say, like Tyler said, women tend to file more and they generally would have custody more often. I would just be curious to say, I mean, he's making this assumption, you know, and one part of this, I don't know if you read this line already, but he said, no, rather, it is much more the product of the painfully obvious open secret that drawing first blood in a brutal divorce blitzkrieg guarantees more cash and prizes. The cruel irony is that this system is the stated purpose of which is to resolve conflict, more often perpetuates the fight, pitting two desperate people against each other and kicking any sense of responsibility down the road. Now, I do agree with part of that, you know, that it can negotiate, you know, and inflict more harm than good. But yeah, with whoever files first, it doesn't seem to make a difference, at least in my personal experience.
It doesn't.
Yeah, good job on that. So why don't we stop it there? I'm gonna go hang out with my wife for a while. But we'll come back
taking our time through this thing.
Yeah, we're getting bogged down, but yeah, that's okay. I'm enjoying it. It's actually, I feel that this is a good conversation, and if someone can learn a little bit of something from this, if they get in this situation, then that's something we've helped with. The next thing is the DVRO trial, the restraining order trial that they go through, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I think it would be cool to read maybe her pleading on this, so you get her side of this story. Just you know, it could be exaggerated. I mean, a lot, you know, it's perfectly fine, but there's a few things. The guy that was at the house, Andy, that when the cops came, his declaration is in there. And then there's some exhibits too that.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to come back to this. I don't want to read too much further because I want to stay on part one, at least until we get done with our kind of breakdown of it. But yeah, I'm enjoying it so far.
Even if you don't end up like fully believing her side of events, you will find that this guy made, I think, as you might expect, several critical mistakes.
Yeah.
that really exacerbated the problem and were completely avoidable.
Yeah, I've got the feeling that, he's already admitted to some in the book, showing up to the house and breaking in. I'm curious as to what more there is, because reading it to me as a skeptic, I'm just like, well, what is he not saying here? And I want to take him at face value, and I want to be empathetic towards the situation. And some of the stuff he is, pretty spot on, just detailing the bureaucracy and sort of the traps that are there, the pitfalls of all of this.
There's those 10 words he keeps talking about, Andy. He's like, and I never said those. So it comes out that you kind of do the breakdown. The accusation is one person says he said part of one person says he said something of another, but no one claims he said those 10 words. So he can go out to the public, go on Jordan Peterson's podcast or Dr. Drew, and he can say, I never said those things. And in the book, and that's true, but
it's factual, but not truthful.
Yeah, so it's frustrating. Yeah, he made a lot of mistakes, and he didn't really own up to them. And once again, that to me is the problem. So we're breaking through this, and then hopefully we can help put forward everything that he's actually wants in the end in a more truthful way ourselves. So that's what we're here for. Anything you want to close with, Meredith? Thank you for coming on. We'll get you on.
Sorry,
for the next
really quick. I wanted to just make it clear that the reason I have a problem with this guy tying his situation into the father's rights thing is that it is a convenient way for him to not take responsibility for all the dumb shit that he did.
Yeah.
When again, there were critical mistakes that he made that I could see a client making if he's in the mindset of everything's biased against fathers. So I'm not going to address any of the things that I can do to put myself in a better position. It's extraordinarily frustrating. I probably would have fired him as a client like pretty fast. Because,
but don't worry, he didn't hire anybody for a long time.
Right. If he was my client, because I mean, the mistakes that he goes on to make are so killer. Like, it's just, that's why I got a problem with this guy trying to paint himself as sympathetic under something that he knows people will have sympathies for, because generally fathers do get fucked over in a lot of, or men in general get fucked over in a lot of ways that it's easy to get sympathy for that. But that has nothing to do with him, in my personal opinion. Right. That's why I had frustration. And
I would say if the system is so rigged against you, then please don't make the mistakes. Don't go down these routes, and don't just think it's a unwinnable thing. At least do what you can. Be there. Andy is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Followed his daughter to Texas. Yeah. Was the dad there? And when tragedy happened, he's there in place to do it because he is the stand-up guy, at least as far as we know.
Be like Andy.
Well, it doesn't stop the other baby daddy from, he just texted me the other day asking if he could claim my daughter on his tax return. So I don't know where he got the gall to even ask that, but we'll have to.
I don't even think that's legal.
That. No, it's not.
Okay.
Because they weren't married. Yeah. My reaction to Andy was like, did you respond with LOL or HAHA? Because that's the only answer to that question.
Yeah.
Well, it took a lot of restraint for me not to say what I wanted to say. And I just said, no, it's going to mess up my records down the road. So
yeah, gotcha. Spud's chiming in. That's wild, absurd. I think she's talking about your tax thing. Yeah. Okay. Meredith, any last words? And
no.
Then Andy. Okay. Thank you for joining us. People can find you at Fletcher Cox.
Yes. Go Eagles.
Follow me at timcast.irl or whatever. And I'm going to be keeping up with the fake conservative drama between a bunch of gay Jews. So be sure to tune in.
By the way, I listened to more of the whole thing. I think Crowder, if he's out there saying that he can give legal advice to people that might be doing this, I would just say after checking everything out, he's not the guy you want to go for legal advice. So.
I think they're both stupid. Yes. I think the contract was bunk, and Crowder is making a bigger deal out of it than it is. Right.
There's more to that. We'll talk about that later, but we'll try to get back. I'm going to be busy this weekend, but I don't know. Maybe next week we can join up and slog through this some more.
Yeah, we only got a couple chapters left to get through part 1, and then I'm looking forward to part 2 and 3. Hopefully it's a little bit more honest. We'll see, but yeah, we'll break down the rest of it, and I'm enjoying doing these with you.
All right. Thanks, Meredith. Thanks, Andy.
Bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Okay, I'm leaving now. Bye, guys.
But she's back.
And now.
Chick-fil-A is completely overrated. It's not that good. I prefer Zaxby's. I prefer Popeyes.
Takes a tough man to make a tender forecast, Nick. And I guess that's me. Keep fucking that chicken.
Should I vote for Dick Cheney on the Libertarian Party? Do I have an obligation to vote for Dick Cheney?
I would say so.
Yes.
Did it work for those people?
No, it never does. I mean, these people somehow delude themselves into thinking it might, but it might work for us.
That one dude was like, not a podcast, I can't find it anywhere, and they don't have video.
Oh, yeah, Peter Janke, yeah.
Yeah, I blocked him.
I'll do it. If he unblocks me, I'll...
He'll buy your shirt if you unblock him, Bert.
He's a wigger.
Yeah, nothing cooler than a 49-year-old wigger. I just started live streaming. Cut me some slack. I'm pretty high tech for a boomer. But anyways,
boomer.